Welcome, 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 ladies and gentlemen. I am your host, Devonte Colonel, and welcome to another episode of the Inspired Challenge podcast. Today, we are going to be having an interesting conversation where we're going to be getting into the dynamics at play of what it's like to be an Asian American in a predominantly white business landscape, dating landscape, and cultural landscape. And so, as we jump into that, just know that this is going to be a very different kind of conversation. And it's going to be something that is going to allow you to have insight to the experience of a group of people that you may not typically think of what it is like for them and what the implications societally are. So without further ado, let me go ahead and introduce my man here, Kevin Dow. Kevin, please give the people your name, age, occupation, relationship status, and what you like to do for fun.
Well, thank you for having me, Devon. So first off, I will say you actually got my last name correctly. For most people, when they usually say my last name, they usually will butcher it. So I'm kind of glad. But my name is Kevin Dow. I'm 24 years old. Yes, God, I sometimes say that I feel old being at 24 years old, but the thing is, as what I've been told many times, you're still young, you still got time. But I'm a personal branding photographer. Look, my mission, my passion, I'm here to help build legacies, especially businesses and brands, particularly individuals, help resonate who they are. What's their story? What's their impact that represents who they are to their clients per se.
Mm-hmm. And so in that, man, I know in the face of branding, like something that always comes across in the aspect of presentation, how people receive you, what you give off. And so, Kevin, for you, what have you noticed? Kind of give us a quick backstory on what your experience has been in sort of growing up and how you ended up where you are now and some of the things that shaped you.
Because, well, first off, as an Asian American, and for most of my Asian peers that are probably watching this show right now, look, I grew up in a very rough childhood dynamic. I come from an immigrant family. I come from the second generation. As what many of my peers know, being the second generation, we are kind of in a bit of an identity crisis where we have to figure out one of two ways. Do we keep our foot in the old world, or do we keep our foot in the new world, especially here in the United States, where this country, as we get close to being 250 years old next year, God forbid, that we can shed our old norms that we came from, our old country. I'm respectively Vietnamese. We can shed our old ideals from our old country, come here, and build a whole new life from scratch, no matter what. Full bar, no hands barred. That for me, particularly, the one thing I can at least agree with my own family growing up, they fought tooth and nail to come to this country for a better life when the 1980s came around. Because even though I don't want to get political on the current immigration climate in this country, but I understand where my parents came from. The thing is, that's their story to tell. For me in particular, though, growing up as a 24-year-old, especially here in the 21st century, look, I have my own story to tell, especially being around people like you, people at networking events or mixers I meet, clients that I work and sit down with, because we all have our own story to tell. And what most of my Asian peers don't really realize, especially my own Vietnamese peers growing up, we were kind of boxed in a little bit. We were kind of told to indirectly, I don't want to say this in the bad way, just indirectly shrink a little bit, shrink to stay within the tribe, stay within the norms, stay within the ideals of what our parents, what our own family members, especially our own cultural peers, essentially a small little echo chamber that that we grew up, and pretty much, well, we're gonna have to be part of this one size fits all book, no matter what.
Mm. And what have you noticed that have been some of the different cultural pieces, whether it's cultural or it's idealistic? What are some of those pieces that
Mm,
you've really felt either as whether you want to call it a hamper or it's called maybe a limiting factor
mm,
or however you want to identify it
yeah.
that have shaped you that you've had to kind of work to decouple, and why did you feel the need to remove yourself from those?
Yeah, well, for me in particular, I will say, as I've gotten older, certainly a lot more wiser per se, I've really learned over time, really learned over time growing up that if I shrank to what my Asian peers wanted, what most of my family members wanted, as I like to say, I would pretty much hit a ceiling, but a ceiling, essentially a very small ceiling above my head, which which would likely mean when I hit that ceiling, well, the growth factor will be very, very limited. I can understand what my family wants. I can understand what most of my Asian peers want out of me as a person, as a Vietnamese American myself. It's to stick within the norms. Just play it safe, man. We got you. Uh, here's the problem. Here's the problem. Here in this country, man, we can take risks however we want to do, however we want. That's really the basis and the norm of how we all grew up, regardless of where we came from in this country, where taking risks means taking a stand for yourself, as well as taking a stand for your future, your next episode, your next story or vision that you have been dreaming of for forever, maybe 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, whatever. But
Hmm. Oh, sorry,
yeah.
didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, no,
Oh, okay.
oh no. I thought you. So, admittedly, I thought you actually had. I thought you had to say something, if you could believe it or not. But in particular, though, when we talk about how I had to shed a lot of those norms, essentially, to put it bluntly, I had to stop listening, or pretty much disagreed with most of my family, most of my Asian peers, and oh god, the moment I say that, disagreeing with your family, disagreeing with your Asian peers, most of my Asian peers would immediately throw pitchforks. They would immediately go insane over what I just said. But that's the hard truth. That's the hard truth. If you're shrinking yourself, agreeing to what your family wants you to do, what your Asian peers want to do to quote unquote in the culture we call it save face end quote.
Hmm.
It, you're putting yourself in a very tough position because again, especially as I said, being the second generation, we have both respective foots in two doors.
Hmm.
The one that our family wants and our Asian peers want us to have or dream of, be a part of. The other half of the door, which I could say I'm likely in the other side of the door. I have both. I have both feet in that freaking door. What what this country wants, what I personally want as a person 10, 20, 30, 40 years down the line as someone who is a Vietnamese American myself.
Mm. Man, it's definitely an interesting conversation to have.
Yeah.
So I'm Thai as well,
Yeah.
but in terms of culture and whatnot,
Mhm.
there was only one person that I had around that had any remnant of that style of Asian culture.
Mhm.
My mother grew up in such a way that she definitely adapted at a young age and tried to take on as much of like that
Mhm.
culture as possible because she grew up from the age of about maybe 4 or 5 years old,
Mhm.
um just totally American, like, and in terms of Asian culture she was
Yeah.
in a mostly like white and black area,
Correct.
so she more of got in touch with like with her black side if
Mhm.
it more than anything,
Yeah.
and mainly the Asian aspect was like a little bit of conversation and then like a restaurant that was owned at the time. Something that I know
Mhm.
that is kind of a prominent thing that happens in Asian communities. And we see a little bit of it happen here in this Central Florida location as
Mhm.
we're in. Here we see places like Kissimmee that are well renowned for how deep and strong that Latino community is.
Mhm.
And I mean, that's like grants go almost solely to Latino businesses. here in like the Orlando area.
Mills 50, the most prominent example of this Vietnamese. I've known for a very long time here that Mills 50 is the quote unquote little Saigon of Orlando, where most of my first and second generation Vietnamese Americans, they tend to congregate there to have not just to have a fun night out, but more so to step back, retreat to their own tribe, retreat to their own culture, to at least have a little safe spot. And I have no hate for them. That's a really strong word for me to say that when I say the word hate. I have no hate. I have big respect, and I wish them well in that part. For me in particular, I'm always that person that wants to take the opportunity to try new things, try other languages, try other cuisines, food, and all. It's pretty ironic, as I say. I have an unwritten rule whenever I personally eat out on a night out. I always explicitly like to say, even though I'm Asian American, I'm Vietnamese American myself, I'm not that type of person that will eat out Asian food unless absolutely necessary, with some very few exceptions.
And speaking of like the Mills kind of Saigon community and whatnot, it's no doubt that like what is that also encompassing is it East Colonial and everything that happens around there?
You are a bit close on the money, because Mills 50, when most people think of Mills 50, and even I thought of myself too when I visited there a few times, they think Mills Avenue up from Colonial all the way up to US 1792. From the non-Orlando locals, I apologize on geography. If you like to look at the geography of it, please check Google Maps. But most people think that Mills Avenue stretches all the way up to 1792. That's where all the strip of Asian and Vietnamese businesses are. Well, not exactly. It's usually from what I've learned, it's essentially Mills Avenue, which is essentially that hub, that little stretch. Think of the transit-oriented hub, the little business community that's centralized right there in the intersection. And most of Colonial, about 3 to 5 miles from what I've seen, is mostly Asian businesses. Go further up Mills Avenue, then the vibe starts to change a little bit. It's your typical American speakeasy bars, dive bars, which I'm actually personally a very, very big fan of myself.
So I guess one dynamic that I can see in terms of what they look at is, because I know I've heard that there will be communities of any community, whether it's Asian or Hispanic or what have you. Well, actually, probably prominently those two mainly, that their entire plan will be, we're going to go into this area. We're going to all put our money together to get one store for one person. That person's going to get some stuff. They're going to collateral out that business, and we're all next going to get the next store in the plaza. And then eventually that entire plaza now belongs to the community. And so in a sense, it's like, I can kind of see it. It's like, from a black background, I can see that as a thing of like, this is similar to what they did with Tulsa, where there was a thing known as, Black Wall Street for a time. And that's essentially what it was black business owners coming together and like building business type communities where they all were going out on a limb for each other for the sake of having a hub spot where like black people could have their area.
This was a similar scenario because so I'm not from Orlando. I wasn't born and raised here. I was born and raised in St. Paul, Minnesota. So the Twin Cities, there is a small Vietnamese community. It's not as big and prominent as say here in Central Florida, where if you go to the Mills, it is going to be a very obvious hub spot. And and if you drive around Orlando, you commute around Orlando, it'll be the same thing. But in Minnesota, in the Twin Cities in particular, it's a lot more concentrated. It's a strip called University Avenue. It's the Twin Cities equivalent to East Colonial Drive or Highway 50. But even what you said is they also created that similar type of Asian Mills where it was generations of Vietnamese Americans or Asian Americans just buying out strips, buying out property, and building a small little community on that stretch.
Yeah. So for you, when you kind of contemplate where you sit with it, you kind of more come from a place of you don't want to be within kind of that plan of activity.
Yes.
You want to be able to venture out and to accomplish your own ambitions, things that align with like uh, certain desires that you see to have fulfilled.
That's right. That's right. In particular, in the sense of, I I personally I respect my culture. I
Hmm.
respect where I came from, genuinely through my heart. As someone who's Vietnamese myself, I enjoy the food. I sometimes, even though my Vietnamese is a bit shot, a bit shot for most of my traditional peers, will again throw pitchforks at me over that. But still, I respect where I came from. And as Americans, we all, regardless of our race, color, creed, we all respect where we came from, no matter what. I, al- but here in this country, I've learned over time that venturing out, expanding your norms, expanding your ideals, what really to me was the best way forward to build my own story, my own episode. As what you said about your mother, who was Thai, who is Thai, brought brought up that she got adapted very quickly into, I think, a white and black environment, if I'm not
Hmm.
mistaken. I remember growing up, my own uncle. I think he's the only uncle in my own bloodline that
Hmm.
supports what I do, but understands the vision, the role model of what I'm doing. Since he's in the first generation, you would expect in the first generation dynamic mindset, they come to this country, they're trying to build a whole new life from scratch, trying to survive, and then pass it down to their kids, but as well as, quote unquote, retaining the culture, retaining the language, but at the same time doing what my own peers, what my own family expected me to become: a doctor, a lawyer, engineer. My uncle, he was a little bit different. I remember growing up in the Twin Cities. It was, I think, 7 years old at a family reunion. If you could
Hmm.
believe it or not, we were we were all sitting out in lawn chairs on the patio. On the patio, or was it? Yeah, it was the patio. It was the patio of all things. He was not even of all things, just joking the fact that he didn't shoo the mosquito away. If you could believe it or not, it was actually literally, it was a mosquito. There was a mosquito lingering around and wanting to bite on his skin. But I remember him telling me, Kevin, look, here's the thing. There's a reason why I did not swat that mosquito away. He gave it to me in the most explain me like I'm five term. If you know Reddit, the most explain me like I'm five term
Hmm.
possible. He said, Kevin, there's a reason why I didn't swat that mosquito away. It's because I adapts to my surroundings. He just puts his hands out. I adapt to my surroundings. Here's the thing. Starts pointing at my own my own family members, my own traditional first generation and sometimes second generation peers. So I want you to know, that your family members around you, uh, your younger peers around you, they don't want to they don't want to adapt to their surroundings. They want to swat that mosquito away. They don't want it to bite them. For you, Kevin, in particular, be open enough to let that mosquito bite you. Be open enough to, well, I don't want to literally say suffer, but figuratively per
Hmm.
se, be open to just dealing with it, adapting with it, and if you and the thing is when you when those family members, those Asian peers, they swat that mosquito away, they're preventing themselves from something much bigger. Admittedly, this flew over my head, pun intended, pun intended. As I grew up, though, and being from Minnesota, the state has been well known for a very long time to have a very big Scandinavian influence.
Hmm.
So I didn't grow up around a lot of my own Asian or Vietnamese peers. So I didn't have the same echo chamber that, say, most of my own peers would have to deal with down here in Orlando, respectively. I took it to heart, took it for candor. Didn't think much of it.
Hmm.
Didn't think much of it. As I think about 5, 10 years rolled on, I sat down with my uncle. I sat down with my uncle for a beer within the last, I think, 3 years. He's been going through a lot right now, which it's really rough for me to say. But when we sat down for a beer within the last 3 years, he brought to me, Kevin, man, what you did as the years went on, what I've seen you do, not just from a career standpoint, but just taking my explain me like I'm five advice. I'm really proud of the fact that you listened to me. And then at the same time, he gave me that full serious spiel of, as Asian Americans, as Vietnamese Americans, we were kind of, traditionally, we were boxed in. We have that sort of that tribe mindset, especially in the first generation, where coming to this country, it's all about retaining as much of the culture as possible. But contrary to popular belief, many of our own peers, many of our own family members, myself included, just don't realize there's always something bigger. He told me that when he came to this country, similarly in the 80s, like my own mother and father, if you could believe it or not, coincidentally, his own grandfather told him to really open up once he came here to this country. Just open up, in all seriousness, open up, expand your norms, expand your ideals, because this is a new country. This isn't Vietnam anymore. This isn't quote unquote the old guard, the old world. We're in a new place, a new area, a new mindset where you can break stuff, you can do whatever you want. Now, obviously, in certain cases, yes, you may get, well, retributed depending on the scenario, but overall, you can take risks in this country, you can adapt, and no one's going to say a word. If your Asian peers or our own family members say a word, well, that's on them. They have bigger problems or bigger fish to fry right now.
So what's the reason that your uncle was such a heavy influence on you?
The reason he was a big heavy influence on me in particular, not just from a career standpoint, but more, I could say, from a life standpoint. He really changed my worldview as a second generation Vietnamese American myself. Most people that are watching this right now, they would think it's your parents. It's your parents that changed your worldview. Well, not exactly. Most of my parents, my mother and father, I respect them for what they do. I love them dearly, but where they came from, who they are, what their mindset is, it's vastly different than what I was influenced from my own uncle, who has been very supportive for what I do.
Makes sense, man. So, how has your identity in any way influenced or shaped how things have been able to work for you in terms of, like, whether it's socially or with dating and the business world?
Yeah, because there were some things, I will say, that I had to shed a little bit once I stepped out into the real world. Stepped out, I could say, my own family box, the Asian environment that I grew up with. Yes, I was that person who was guilty of people pleasing everyone growing up. Yikes. Yes, I know. Even you yourself, if I'm not mistaken, you probably had that same mindset as well. That was probably one of the biggest things I had to shed early on. The other part was, in Asian American culture, we were kind of told to just keep your head down. If there's something wrong, don't speak up. Just keep your head down, keep going, keep the peace, stay silent, just save face. To me, I can agree with that to an extent. But when the actions are so prevalent that you even most of the country might disagree with it, that's a big opportunity for you to at least speak up and make a change. Because when change happens or accountability is created, again, as I said, change happens, as well as overall life continues to evolve in some way, shape, or form. As humans, we all make mistakes no matter what.
So for you, what was your first ever networking event like?
Oh, my first ever networking events. Oh boy, I remember. God, my age is really starting to show, even though I'm 24. I remember it was June of 2019. Yes, this was a year and a half before the pandemic, of all things. Yes, today, and when we get older, when we have kids, man, it's gonna be great to tell our
Oh
grandchildren. It's
yeah.
gonna be great to tell our grandchildren what we had to deal with a year later. But June of 2019, I was at this one networking event. It was a luncheon in Winter Park. I think it was called Winter Park Networking at TNT. The
Mm.
place, it's on Park Avenue. It doesn't exist anymore, unfortunately. They've rebranded a couple of times. I think it's now a sushi restaurant, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh
Yeah,
wow.
I think they've
Yeah.
been ran it a couple times during the pandemic. They unfortunately closed down. They had some good tea, but I'm not a tea drinker myself. I'm a big coffee drinker of all things. Uh, I remember that event. I walked in. It was 10. It was about 10 to 20 people. 10 to 20 people, 23 years older, and coincidentally, yes, it was mostly a white dominated crowd. But and being Asian American, you would expect going in there, I would probably put my head down a little bit and just say what I do and go out on my day. I did that to an extent, but I also took it with stride because this is an environment that, well, I grew up, especially as I said, I grew up in Minnesota where there was a big Scandinavian influence, so there wasn't much of my Asian peers around. I got quickly used to it. The thing was though, even though I got quickly used to the environment, I wasn't used to explaining what I did, explaining the impact of what I do, as well as what my biggest mentors told me later on. Verbiage is extremely important. What you say, depending on the tone as well as the words that come out of your mouth, impacts what people think of you.
It's very true.
Yeah. So I walked in there. I walked in there that day, explained, hey, my name is Kevin. I do portraits. I didn't say personal branding portraits. I didn't figure out my niche at the time. This was 5 years ago. 5 years later, yes, I know my biggest niche now. But 5 years ago, I didn't even know what my niche was. I just said I did portraits and real estate photography. It's it's very uplifting when after I said what I did, most of those 10 to 20 connections, they were very positive, very supportive that I walked in. None of them even realized I was an 18-year-old kid at a networking event or a mixer or luncheon, just going into these events, building relationships at a very young age.
Mm-hmm.
Because most of my own peers, now, and I'm not speaking from the Asian peer dynamic, I'm talking about the ones that are still in college. The ones that are my age right now, they're not going to figure this out until they're 30 or 40 years old.
Yep.
At worst, 50, God forbid.
And have you been able to kind of pierce into any circles that typically may have seemed exclusive or been difficult for some people to navigate? And if so, like, how have you managed to do that?
Oh boy. If we're talking pure certain circles, if we're talking about the movers and shakers circle, think of Orlando's Elite, where all the old money, or just the old money crowd, where everyone is very reserved. Admittedly, I broke into that like a madman. The thing is, I have a persona where it really does skew a little loud. I will literally I'm not going to literally break things, but I figuratively break things and don't give a darn about it. I do not give a darn about it. Because of my own persona, as well as at the same time, most of those white peers in particular, respectfully, I won't name names. See me for who I am. They expected me to shrink down a little bit. They expected me to. How can I say this here? Expected me to just be like all the other Asian Americans, quiet. We know what we do, but we're just gonna show it and move on. No. I come into a room, the entire room starts to shake all of a sudden, and that's also through years and years of relationships that I've had to cultivate over time. So when I see what a similarly my own Asian American peers struggling to break in a room. I actually saw that recently. Recently at another mixer. I won't name names. I still remember that there was two Vietnamese guys. Obviously, they spoke fluent English. They were all in the corner. They were standing in the corner.
man.
I just knew. Oh man, I'm glad they're stepping out of their comfort zone. But boy, oh boy, they are in for a very, very wild ride when they met me for the very first time, and they were taken aback by my persona and just how different I acted.
Oh man, do you ever see it out and about and just kind of have that sense of like, let me guide these people a bit and like the kind of getting out of their own comfort zone and introduce them to some people?
I have tried that. If you can believe it or not, I have tried it. I'm always an open book. I always want to help my own next generation, especially being Asian American, where we have it twice as hard to break in. I'm always open to at least passing it down, teaching it. The problem with that, as I always say, most of my own Asian American peers, they're wired in the dynamic where they're kind of expected to shrink, and that's the hardest parts of teaching them when their dynamics as well as their mindset of what they grew up with, even myself, which I had to culturally remove from, it was to just shrink, to just shrink. Just don't step out of your comfort zone. Just stay within the tribe where everyone will agree with you, shake hands with you, and you're good to go. But that's just not how it works here in the U.S., as I've learned. It's not how it works, unfortunately. As I've tried to, believe me, but as what Adam Grant said, I'm going to have to be a disagreeable giver on that part. I'll do my best to give when I can, but sometimes when I see that when I see that value may be dead on arrival, I will personally not throw any more value into that.
Makes sense. And for you, how this is gonna kind of like whiplash, switch lanes here now. How has the dating world been for you as an Asian American? I saw something recently. Check this out now.
Yeah.
I saw something recently in terms of dating apps that said that when it comes to who's desired where,
yes,
white men at the top, and then after that is black men, Hispanic men, and then Asian men.
Oh, why am I not surprised when I hear that stat? Why am I not surprised? Why am I not surprised, Devato? Yes, to an extent, it is true. In dating apps in particular, Asian men, we kind of have the lowest of the totem pole when it comes to the dating scene. The lowest, and if you could believe it or not, somehow Asian women have the most value from all types of races. God, for most of my own Asian peers just watching this, get uncomfortable because yes, it is true. Unfortunately, as an Asian guy in the dating world, the dating landscape, yes, I've had my fair share of amazing dates that have walked through my own door, just walked through my own forte, my own vision, my own mindset. Now, was it all Asian women? No, of course not. Of course not. What would you expect? What would you expect? Because, well, most of my own, from personal experience, this isn't all Asian women. From personal experience, most of the Asian women that I've met, they're very traditional. They're really dead set in the mindset of stick within the family norms, stick within the family ideals. Just as we brought up earlier, boxed in, stay submissive. Just keep your head down. Don't say much. Just move on. Just move on. Forget about it. If it's something that you disagree with, you want to speak up, well, forget about it. Don't stand up for yourself. For the type of woman that I've actually met, if you could believe it or not, because of my own persona being loud, cultivating, it has attracted a lot of the white women that within the past 5 or 7 years, if you could believe it or not. Meanwhile, at the same time, though, I'm actually quite used to it. As I said, I grew up in Minnesota, Scandinavian influence everywhere. There was a lot of blondes and brunettes walking around on every corner. Even in my own high school growing up, it was the I don't want to say cultural norm. It was the norm. It was the norm of efficiency that I was used to. Just why break something? Why break something already? Why break something already when you don't need to change it?
So you found yourself kind of more in that realm in terms of more dates with white women.
Yeah.
So if you had to, I guess, kind of,
I will say though, I'm actually not that person that uses dating apps. I
Yeah.
am a very big. Sorry to cut you off though. I'm a very big person that is natural, free flowing conversation in person,
Mhm.
and I don't walk up cold. I will just let the persona be magnified. Just let it be magnetic. Let them come to me for a minute. Yeah, and for most guys, they will look at me. Just go up to the woman. Just talk cold. Well, body language is the biggest factor. It's always been a big factor. Whether you're a guy, a gal,
yeah.
whether you're in dating, or even in the business landscape, body language 100% is the biggest priority when meeting someone professionally or in a dating sense. What are the right fit for you?
Mm-hmm.
But you were saying,
What have you noticed in terms of satisfaction with a lot of the dates that you've had? Because when this is gonna get more personal here,
yes.
when was the last date that you had?
Oh, oh boy, this was actually relatively recent.
Oh, really?
Oh God. This is gonna be a very crazy moment because this was in the new year, the new year 2025. Oh boy,
Mm.
this was the last 6-7 months. I'm really gonna say this on camera. I'm really gonna say this.
Inspired Challenge podcast exclusive, folks. Here we go.
I was out in Tampa Bay. So this fresh cut, if you see here, I actually have a barber out in Tampa Bay. I literally
wow.
drive 1 hour out to get this fresh fade, fresh cut. I tip him well for my
Wow.
time. I tip him well for my time and his. But I met up with one of my buddies that night. My buddies on there who lived out in the Bay. Great dude. He's a court reporter of all things. God bless that dude. God bless him for being in the courtroom and being around some very crazy court cases. Not about the Coldplay recent concert debacle. No. That's different. I mean, that's still developing. We were having some drinks. And all just catching up, shooting the breeze. All of a sudden, this mother-daughter duo. This mother-daughter duo just comes up next to my buddy. They were trying to order some drinks, if you could believe it or not. My buddy just talked to them cold. We all had a very great conversation about motorsports, life in general. I still remember my buddy really had really having a lot of charisma with the daughter, if you could believe it or not. Yes, I
Good
did
for
try my
him.
luck with the butter. If you could believe it or not. Yeah, no, don't call me a milf hunter. No. That's the rarest moment of my life that I talked to someone that was 10 to 20 years older than me. But all of a sudden, the mother has an emotional breakdown or over something. I won't get into it. She all of a sudden just disappears. I don't even know what happened to her.
Oh man.
I don't even know what happened to her. It was just now the daughter, I, and my own buddy, we were having I think 3 espresso martinis, all paid for my buddy and the daughter. They were just drowning. We were all drowning in espresso martinis. Next thing we know, we're at a different bar. Having even more drinks, if you could believe it or not. Well, at the next bar, I held off on the last drink because I needed to calm myself down a little bit. I was having a little too much. Plus, it was my last day in town, so I had to go back to Orlando for a weekend outing. But just before I was leaving, God, I remember the daughter pulling my hand. I could tell she loved my magnetic persona, if you could believe it or not. She pulled my own arm. Said, "Kevin, where are you going?" I told her, "Look, I have to go back to Orlando. I have a weekend outing." I said, "No." It was 12:30 at night. Also, for road warriors like myself, I know driving 12:30 at night from Tampa to Orlando, it is the most soothing drive I've ever experienced because traffic there it is quiet. It is way too quiet. Apart from road work overnights, the drive takes about an hour. It takes an hour.
That is true.
Yeah.
If you're gonna travel to or fro Tampa,
Yeah.
like save yourself by traveling at night.
Yes. Yeah,
Later
that
the
was the
better.
road warrior tip. Drive at night. If you're driving between Tampa and Orlando, drive back at night when you can.
God forbid traveling there at like 4, in between like 3:30 to like 6:30. Oh no.
I still remember her. She brings up. She brings up. I don't want you to go home, Kevin. Come back to my place. I'll let you use my couch. You can sleep there. You can crash there. This is the more safe for work standpoint. It got a little too intimate there at her place that night. This is the safe for work moment. Yeah. She invited me back to her couch. Very kind. She was a very sweet girl of all things. The moment she brought up that question, my buddy said, "All right, I'm gonna take this cup." Yeah, he actually brought his own drink cup. He brought his own drink cup from that bar. I'm gonna take this cup. I'm gonna go to a different bar. I'm gonna sneak this out with me. You too. Have a good night, buddy. Good to see you again. Enjoy yourself. And well, the rest was history.
Oh man. Wow. So you do get the love like that, huh?
Yes, I
Oh
do.
man.
Larger than life, man. As I said, larger than life.
And in terms of like what you're doing right now, like are you, if you had to put percentages into where you're at for your desires business wise and your attention towards it rather, where would you put your percentages at if you had to say career development, relationship development, family development, friendship development?
Okay. Are we talking percentage wise?
Yeah.
Are we talking percentage wise? If we're talking about career development, that is career and relationship development. It's career is 40%. Career is 40%. Relationship wise, it is nearly a 50% dynamic. 50% dynamic. From
Wait, just to
yeah.
clarify,
So sorry.
are you saying
Hang on.
100% value is all of your possible attention?
Well, I'm personally taken aback by the question. Explain it again.
Okay, got you.
Yes.
So you have 100% of the energy of your attention. So in terms of percentages, out of
Yes.
that whole 100, what percents fall into each of the categories?
Oh, okay. From career, family, relationship, and business.
Yeah.
Okay.
Career, family, relation, and let me be more specific. Career, partner relationships,
Yes.
family, and then friends.
Okay. Because career and friends, it's usually should I well, I could say I combine the two, but if we're gonna keep them separate, because career wise, that's about career wise, it's about 40%, if I'm not mistaken. Relationships, which usually friends or dating, if we want to combine the two.
No. Strictly relationships, as in partner dating, like for the goal of being with in some like long format, and then friends as a different category.
Okay, so relationship wise, I cut out about 20-30% of my time. 30% of my time. It's valuable. It's there. It's there. Would I love to put more value? Yes, but I'm all about finding the right one. I'm all about finding the right one. When it comes to friends wise, that's about 70 to 80%. That's 70 to 80% of my own development as a person itself. When we talk about family, you're not gonna be surprised when I say this number. It is less than 5%. Less than 5%. I don't put. I respect my family. I respect where they came from. But boy, oh boy, we clash a lot when it comes to personal ideals and views. So it's less than 5% of my own effort, and that includes most of my own Asian peers who act the same way as what my family grew up with.
So you said the relationship front was 20 to 30%, but you said that you would like it to be more. So I guess, okay, so right now you mentioned 40% is in career development, 20 to 30% is in relationship. Friends is about 60 to 80%.
Yeah.
No, you said 70 to 80%.
Yeah, 70 to 80%.
And then, which by the way, our numbers aren't working right now because you're
Ah.
sitting around 150%
God,
right.
I'm really
Maybe
count-
130.
Okay, yeah. Even as an Asian, I am not that good at math, unfortunately. Even mental math.
So let's because between the 40% and the 80%, that's
Yes.
already 120%.
Yeah. God. Well, I just showed my willingness to not be good at math on the camera.
So, but the great majority of your time is
Yes.
on career and friendships, like
Yes.
person to person,
Correct.
good relationships between y'all.
Yes, I believed early on, even in career-wise, that relationships are the biggest factor
Mhm.
to find value in getting what you need out of your own career, especially out of your own self, because we all have a need to help each other in some way, shape, or form. If
Mhm.
we don't have that support network, and I could say my family was my support network, but when we clashed on a lot of individual norms
Mhm.
and views, is that really a support network? Probably not so much. Is that really a support network? Probably not.
So you mentioned the 20 to 30% that you want to be greater. So that was going to bring me to the question of if you had the ideal percentages in terms of the divide between career, romantic relationship. Oh, this will be the last freeform question here.
Okay.
Career, romantic relationship, friendships, and family. What would your ideal distribution be?
Say that one more time.
So between career, romantic relationship, friendships, and family, what would your ideal split of your percentage of attention and energy be? For your ideal specifically, with everything in context of who you are, all the dynamics you've experienced.
Are we talking about one combined percentage?
Yeah, one whole percentage.
Okay. One whole percent. So I can answer this right. Say it one more time.
So
I can
out
answer
of
this right.
100%,
Yes.
you said you wish that your relationship percentage was higher than 20 to 30%. So that means that right now your current distribution is not where you want it to be.
Yes.
So my question is, if you had the ideal distribution in terms of where your time and energy goes to, what would that look like with a total of 100%? How would you split that up?
Split that up. Let's see here. Let's split it up 1/4. 1/4, if I'm not mistaken. 1/4. Yeah. Again, but my own mental math is really not computing behind the camera right now. So please correct me, Devonta.
You can,
Yeah.
but that means that you would be giving 25% of your time and attention to your family. Is that ideally what you would want to do?
Likely not. Likely not.
Okay, so
Yeah.
not 1/4
Yeah.
to everything.
Yeah, not 1/4. Maybe let's just say 3/4. How about 3/4?
Well, how would you apply that? Because so there's 4 options.
Yes.
So to say 3/4, that's 75%.
Yeah.
So are you saying 20? Are you saying you want to do like? You would want to be even, like 33% career, 33% relationship, 33% friendships?
Yes, and then family-wise, it's gonna have to go. It's the family-wise, that's gonna have to tone down a little bit. Tone down a little bit. So I think we're at 83%. 83%, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, if you do 33% across all of them, that's 99%. So
Okay.
you've only got 1% left for family.
Yeah, that would be perfect.
That would be your distribution?
There we go. There we go. Yeah, as I said, man, I'm really embarrassing myself on the camera right now. It's a stereotype of being an Asian American. Oh, we're supposed to be good at math. Oh, no,
man.
unfortunately, not me. Not me.
So we're going to go ahead. We're going to move into some of our close-up segments here. The first one being you get 3 of any questions that you would like. You may ask them honestly, and I will answer them totally honestly.
Okay. Say that one more time.
3 of any questions, you may ask it, I'll answer them.
Hold up. I'm having a brain fart. I'm having a brain fart for a minute. Explain it again.
So right now you can ask 3 questions,
Mhm.
and then I will answer all 3 of your questions that you ask right now.
Okay.
Totally honestly.
Okay. Okay. Perfect. Well, for you in particular, Devonto, as I think of one here right now, a- as uh, as someone who's well, as someone who's Thai yourself,
Hmm.
as someone who's Thai, I would like to ask what is it like when you yourself that you had to break out of your own mold? What was it like? What was the dynamic like, and what should our Asian peers understand when they break out of that dynamic?
Okay.
Hmm.
So at least in terms of my experience, I can say that I realized that there was a good bit of racism
Hmm.
that exists in the Asian ethos,
Hmm.
um, where very much so the kind of white community is
Yeah.
very elevated in terms of their perception. The black community is definitely like the bane
Hmm.
of who a Asian individual would want to spend their time around.
Hmm.
That was something that I learned more as I got older, and I started to understand more and more what different words and what different body language reflexes were. I understood the context of how, whether it was certain individuals of my family, whether it was certain individuals that I knew just
Hmm.
in a wider Asian community, I learned the context of these reactions more.
Yeah.
And that was something that I didn't care for much. And so uh, I find myself heavily departed from that typical um, ethos
Hmm.
of the Asian community.
Okay. Well, the other thing I like to say is growing up in emotionally charged environments. I have to ask though, as since you mentioned that, I could tell if I'm not mistaken. What candidly, being observance, how has that had, say, an impact a little bit on the people that you've met? Because for me, being observance, yeah, ironically, being observant in photography, personal brand
Hmm.
photography, has a very, very big strength. But peel back the layers, peel back the layers in relationships and networking. I read body language like a madman.
So in terms of how it's affected those around me, what do you mean by that?
When it comes to being observant, have you, if I'm not mistaken,
Hmm.
has it has it looked at have you looked at the dynamic of people that you met much differently now since you're very observant on who they are? Because that's what Oprah said.
Mm.
Believe in what people do, not what people say.
Yeah, absolutely. So to answer that question, I would say that I have noticed it.
Hmm.
You can always tell more of a bit closed body language. I find it very easy to be at a networking event, for example,
Hmm.
and to meet someone and they're like low energy, like body half turned
How about
away.
transactional? How about transactional? We've had our fair share of those
Oh yeah,
transactional
absolutely.
transactional people that have walked in. Hey, take my card, or
Hmm.
you explain what you do. All of a sudden, hey, can I have your card, brother?
Yep, absolutely. And
And
then more so,
mhm,
you can tell when people are kind of in just like the sales mode or the like, oh, this person is trying to talk to me now.
yeah,
And then you say something of interest, and suddenly you can literally see their body language where they sit up a little straighter,
hmm,
their eyes get a little bit more wide. Now they're facing you more so. And so I've definitely noticed that. And sometimes I'll even just test out little pieces just to like see the reaction that a
hmm.
person would have to this. And I would say I'm almost disappointingly confirmed about a majority of my thoughts about how people's perception of things are, perceptions of me are, perceptions of themselves are.
Hmm.
You can tell a lot about people by the way that they interact with other people.
Yes.
Um, and a lot of the time, I'm very disappointed that I'm right.
Usually for me, I don't get disappointed when I give someone my business card.
Hmm.
I throw them a decoy number, and it's a decoy number I actually monitor and answer. You know this dynamic. I won't explain it on camera here, but the moment I call on my other decoy number, they don't respond. That just tells me, yeah, buddy. Thank you very much. You confirmed that you were worth my time. That you didn't need to call my valuable other number. Anyway.
Oh man.
Yeah.
And
But one last question I'd like to ask.
absolutely.
One last question I'd like to ask, because I know you mentioned that 3 questions were were the bare minimum. Oh, the base, not bare minimum. That sounds bad when I say it. It sounds bad when I say it. In particular, though, for the next generation that's ahead of us right now, especially my own younger Asian American peers, our own younger Asian American peers, that are trying to break into spaces that I have been able and you have been able to successfully do. What is the one piece of advice that you want to give to that generation? The one piece of advice.
The advice for them, you mean in terms of being able to successfully do it and make headway?
Yeah.
The advice I would give them is to show up with a mission and know why you're there. I think that there's a time and place for just showing up at a place and being able to just absorb it. I think that's valuable and that has merit. And if you're a person that your situation allows you to just show up and absorb, then fantastic. But if you're a person who you're pressed on a time scale of some sort, you're pressed on, you have certain obligations you have to take care of, the best thing I can say is show up with a mission.
Yeah.
Because if you show up just to place yourself there, sometimes that has merit. But even if you're doing that, like the mission should be that you're going to take at least 5 incredibly valuable note points. And those note points are going to be things that you reflect on. So I think it's very important when you go out to go out missionally minded. Whether it's implementing some type of process that you've developed, whether it's talking to a certain number of people, getting a certain number of cards, having a certain number of organic conversations versus like sales conversations. I think it's very important to set the mind frame ahead of time because as they say, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. So go out with a plan, execute on it, and then afterwards, I think you'll be way more satisfied with those results because then you have something that you can measure what you spent your time and energy on there. So that's what I would tell them.
Well, especially when it comes to being presentable too. You're coming in confident, ready to go. That you know your worth. You know your headway right off the bat. You're not being willing to box in. And if people say aren't a big fan of you, I have some people out here in Orlando that aren't particularly big fans of me. Is it particularly fine? Is it particularly okay to be fine with it? That not everyone's gonna like you.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of like a phase 3, maybe even like a phase 4 thing. I'm a big fan of like very much fly on the wall kind of stuff and kind of just getting a sense of what you're in and operating within that environment, implementing your mission to it. So I would look at that in terms of like, if you're at a place where you're wanting to really assert yourself into certain things, so I would say definitely there's going to be people that y'all just aren't a match for each other, personality-wise, business-wise, like whatever it may be.
Because I've learned that personally, the hard way. The hard way being in the business world like this. Again, growing up, people pleasing everyone was our biggest mission accomplishment of the century.
Yep.
I've learned that the hard way coming on the road.
In fact, if anything, what I would tell someone is go in there with the aim of like, how much of an uncomfortable conversation can I have? Like, how many uncomfortable conversations? Sometimes that's an aim too, because if people can become comfortable with fumbling and they see it as like a game for them to like make it to where a person doesn't want to talk to them, that in and of itself can be a growing experience. I've
Mm.
actually played that game a good bit myself, where my aim was like, okay, like let's say going back to dating, let's say I want to talk to a girl. How badly can I strike out with this girl?
Mhm.
Because a lot of guys' fears is being rejected by a girl. And similarly, a lot of people in the business world fear is, oh, I'm going to talk to this person and I just won't know what to say.
Yeah.
So you turn that into a game where you say, I want to bomb as hard as I can.
It's game theory, man. Game
Exactly.
theory of all things.
So that's what I would say as well in terms of building confidence. Like, give yourself the space and the playroom to bomb out, so that way when you want to have conversations with people that you think are beneficial to both of you mutually,
Mhm.
or that is something of interest that you want to seriously pursue. This is dating and business. You're able to do that because you struck out where it was not as important,
Yeah.
and now you can hit the mark where it is important.
Mhm.
So yeah, man. Great questions, by the way.
Yeah, thank you, man. Thank you. But most of again, being in this game, being in this business world long enough,
Mm-hmm.
you got to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. From
Absolutely.
what I've learned, you got to be comfortable with who you are, but at the same time, you got to be uncomfortable that you're gonna get a bit disliked. You're gonna get rejected. You're gonna get to be that person. You're too much.
Yep. Yep. And so, what are your final three thoughts that you would like to leave with the audience?
Because my final three thoughts, especially with the audience right now, especially to my Asian peers watching, when I say don't keep your head down, literally do not keep your head down. Because if you keep your head down, you're limiting yourself to potential future opportunities. You're going to limit yourself to the people that you want, maybe love to talk to down the line. That's my biggest pet peeve when I see a lot of my own Asian American peers not wanting to break out of the tribe. They'll keep their heads down. I'm not going to take a risk, man. I just want to stay comfortable, have the same five dudes that I've known for almost 20 years gas me up like there's no tomorrow. And that's okay. That's okay. But as I like to say, that's an echo chamber. It's an echo chamber. The other part is when you walk into rooms like I do as an Asian American all the time, especially a white dominated room, I walk in with a confident persona where it's magnetic, it's attractive. It's not because of my looks. Yes, I may look extremely nice right now, but it's more than just looks. How do you want to be remembered? How do you want to be seen and known, not just from a career standpoint? How do you want to be seen or known when you walk into the room? Because when I walk in the room, people say, "Hey, it's Kevin the photographer." No, it's not just that. It's Kevin, that dude who's real. He's thoughtful. He's provoking. He's 100% energetic, loud, as well as that guy that can at least be a helping hand, or at least can talk some real stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Sports, like sports or news, or even the current political climate we have right now.
Nice.
The other part, I always say, as for most of my Asian American peers, now if your family, if you're gonna try to explain this to your family, what we talked about of what to do, especially here in this American business climate. If they're in the first generation, believe me, to put it bluntly, they are not going to change. No matter how many sticks and stones that you may try to throw, no matter how many words you'll try to splice at them, we as humans, we are stupidly hardwired. We only change unless we decide to. That's the toughest thing that my own Asian American peers, they get a little insecure. They want validation. That's the thing that I lacked, even myself growing up as well. I will say, telling my own views and dynamics that are different than my own parents was essentially going to become a dead on arrival standpoint. It's going to be a long-winded argument where both sides are going to play chicken against each other.
Man.
Mhm.
Yeah, and it's definitely true. First generation. I'm a third generation Asian
Okay, so
myself.
you're far out of the
So
dynamic already.
I've got a few steps in between it.
Yeah, you have a few holdouts. You have a few
Mm.
holdouts, but I'm in that generation where where there is a lot of holdouts where I have to deal with.
So at this time, my man,
Mhm.
we're gonna go ahead. We're gonna close this thing out with a prayer.
Mhm.
So what is something that I and the audience can come around you about in prayer?
Uh, Good question. Good question. Is this a religious prayer or is this more of a
This is a religious prayer to Jesus Christ.
uh, to Jesus Christ Himself? The one thing I can respect Him. We all came to this world with a unique gift. We all came to this world born. We all came to this world born with a passion, born with a blessing, born with a unique opportunity that we may still have not figured out. But you are needed, and you must freaking do it.
Nice.
That's it, because that's what I like to say. God gave us all a gift at birth, man.
Mm-hmm. So how can I pray for you?
Oh, oh boy. I don't follow much of God itself.
Mm-hmm.
If you'd like to take the reins, please do.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in terms of for this question, this is just a thing of like just think of something right now in life that you are either excited about, that you are nervous or maybe feel some discouragement about, or something that you could use encouragement in.
Yeah.
And essentially, this will be me going and presenting that to God on your behalf and and praying to Him for these things to be ordered in steps that are prosperous to you spiritually.
The one thing spiritually is I always envision of that guy. I don't want to be known locally. I want to be known nationally on a bigger scale. I've always had bigger ambitions, and that's the one thing I've always felt a little bit whenever if I do look up to God is I always dream of the bigger picture. I nationally has always been my end goal. I would love to have 1/3 of this country know who I am as a person, what my life story is, not just from my career standpoint, but where I came from. And it helps empower, again, the next generation of Vietnamese Americans or Asian Americans that are still struggling to find their footing, or that are a little insecure of who they are.
Okay. All right. So at this time, folks, please join me in prayer for our man, Kevin.
All right.
All right.
Yeah.
Dear Lord and Heavenly Father, we thank you for this time, being able to sit down with Kevin and have conversation about this interesting dynamic of what it's like to be a second generation Asian American and the dynamic differences between the cultural differences, but also the interplay, the differences that are in between us and our predecessors and generations, the differences in ways. Lord, Kevin has a heart that desires to leave legacy and leave impact. His heart is that he would be able to touch the next generation and to leave something that they would be able to see and know that it is safe for them to be able to take a hold of life and to pursue something that may be different than what they grew up with. And so, Lord, I pray that you would order his steps in such a way that allow him to do something that, and to meet people and to have relationships that facilitate this end goal and mission so that he can be an encouraging voice to this cause and so that he's able to fulfill all of your greatest purposes for him. Dear God, may you be with the audience and bless them as everyone that has listened to this has given generous amounts of their time, and we're grateful for that. And we pray that we may all walk forward in good faith, in action, and closer towards your will. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
All right. Mark, go ahead and put camera on me. I'll do the shutdown. Do you have the shutdown for the live stream on the other one ready to go? That might be closed out. Yeah. Here, I'll unlock it. Folks, we're going to do the outro real quick. Hold on. Give us a second.
We have technical difficulties.
All right. So once I do the outro, yeah, you'll do in stream, then you'll do don't do
End stream and then stop stream.
no. Don't do stop stream until the very last thing. All right. So I've been your host, Devontae Colonel. Thank y'all for joining us here live again on the Inspired Challenge podcast, and we will see you on the next episode. And we're out.